Wow, after seemingly insurmountable odds, we are live again, and we lost YouTube Live potentially for 3 months. We are currently involved in a private situation to try to get that resolved. We are dealing with YouTube directly, and we are trying to mitigate whatever has happened. There will be more to report on that, but it is potentially a very serious legal issue right now, so we are not going to be talking about that any further until we get more down the road on that process. Then we tried to do Facebook Live, and I made an announcement. And before we got that announcement, we put the announcement out, everything looks good, and then Facebook has a nationwide blackout, and we lost the ability to do Facebook. So we told you guys it was going to be on Facebook, we lost that. And because of the possibility, however silly this might sound to you, that this was some sort of active interference of our ability to do what we do, I continued forward and we got Periscope going, but we only were able to do it at the very last minute. So there's a whole bunch of settings that we have to do here in order to get it to work right. We didn't understand that, so it took a little time to get started. But now we're here and everything is good. I also did not want to do this broadcast yet because I have temporary veneers on, and that means that my teeth are in the process of being overhauled, and so right now I have the cheap and fake looking veneers on before the good ones come. So before all the haters get started, I was thinking about not doing any camera work until this was fixed, but we are working on it anyway because of the timing of our launch and the delay of these veneers. Now you have to understand, if you take on the cabal like I do, it causes a lot of anxiety. And one of the things that actually happened when I went to the dentist was I found out that I had ground all the enamel off of my molars on both sides of my mouth, but particularly over here. And you could see that in the broadcasts because literally like the whole chewing surface on this side of my mouth was greatly worn down. Now, of course, that means there's going to be ridicule and so forth, but what we had to do ultimately is I had to get an overhaul where I get what's called onlay veneers so that I can restore the chewing surface in my mouth, and you have to do the whole mouth. So I don't want to strike a blow against the dental industry, but I will tell you that the process of getting the teeth prepared and getting these put on was 300% more painful than any other pain experience I've ever been through in my entire life. And I have had one day of 9 hours in the chair, one day of 7 hours in the chair. I just had to go again yesterday. Hopefully sometime next week I'm going to get the permanent ones on. It does make my voice lisp a little bit, but this is a very temporary situation, and the other ones will look a lot better. But you know, we have to move forward. There's so much to talk about. We don't have time to delay. So there you have it. All right. So what we're going to do in this episode of Twitter Periscope, if it'll actually keep working, which it looks like it is we're going to be talking to you about the overall concept of Ascension. Now, this is a very sensitive subject for me. It's a subject that I've spent most of my entire career talking about. I take this subject very seriously. If you watched the last video of mine that is still available on YouTube, I was going through many, many ancient prophecies talking about this upcoming event. And
The camera's not switching, sorry David, it's only staying on that camera, so the close camera.
the close camera is not switching.
No, it's not switching to anything but the close camera on the live feed. I'm not sure what's going on, that's why I'm hanging on that camera.
That's very, very strange. Okay, we're just coping with one problem after another. I mean, this is a fight to the death. It is a very serious war. You have no idea what we're going through. The amount of intense craziness, the legal fights, having to call our attorneys, people advising me to take legal action. I mean, it's just crazy what's going on. So we're not going to do any legal action, but we are trying as hard as we can to get through this one day at a time. Anyway, I guess I'm stuck on this camera because none of the other cameras work. Very, very, very frustrating. I don't even know if my slides are going to work. We didn't expect we were going to do Twitter, but here we are. So we're going to go through the questions on the Ascension process. And so the first question here, I don't know if will you be able to do the slides? You can't do the slides at all. Okay, so we got nothing. We got one camera angle, no slides. I'm very sorry about this, folks.
Okay, what does
So no, I'm going to read them here. I got them. I mean, you could read them to me if you want. It's like, but I got the slides I can read. It's probably better if I do it this way because then I can read my questions. Okay, so the first question we have, and you're just going to have to deal with my eye line going over to the laptop. We have no choice. Would you characterize the recent takedown of the third video in your Ascension Prophecy mini docuseries as an attempt by the cabal to suppress your message? The answer is I don't know. It's useful for them, and it appears to be something that has really caused us a lot of disruption. I didn't find out until a couple days ago that we're actually locked out of YouTube for 90 days, even though they made new rules. Those rules only apply if you get hit by a regular upload, not a live stream. If you get hit on a live stream, you lose 3 months. So we are working with YouTube right now to try to remedy this and to try to remedy the attendant public issues that resulted. Now, the reason why this is so interesting, if you were one of the 657,000 that watched that video before it disappeared about a week later, is that I had mentioned how we had literally it was 5.98 million videos on YouTube that had David Wilcock, my name, in the title somewhere or in the description text. I made a point of mentioning this in my broadcast, and then we lost that. Most of those videos, it went from 5.98 million down to 250,000 roughly. Now the reason why that is significant is that put me in a category of maybe about 30 or 40 names on YouTube that were that highly engaged. Now, YouTube is a totally different ecosystem than regular Hollywood or regular celebrity. In other words, you have names that people outside of YouTube would never hear of. What happened?
We're good now.
We're getting all our cameras now? Okay. So I'm glad we at least got that working. So anyway, let's see, do we have our slides? Can you cut to the slide?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we were seeing some pretty weird stuff here, and first of all, let's again roll that clip from the previous broadcast up on track 1 on the right there, showing what I had said on that last video before all of those hits went away. We've been checking the number of YouTube videos that have my name in the title, and believe it or not, in the last few days it's been nearly 6 million different videos on YouTube that have my name in them. And we're going to be talking about that, and incidentally, to show you how significant that is, right now the number of videos with the name Hillary Clinton in them, 3.1 million. So we're almost double the number of actual videos where people either love you or hate you or whatever, but they put that name into the title of a video and they upload it to YouTube. So I don't know why it took me so long to do something like this. I've been working on this live setup for many years, but anyway, let's rock and roll. All right, so there you have it. That was how this whole thing got started, and never in a million years did I think that we would get this force majeure, what appears to be deep state interference, because literally we went from 6 million views down to 250,000. That video has been lost where I explained that, so I wanted to redo it again. So let's go through that really quickly. So first of all, this was the list of screenshots that I took showing, go to the slide, yep. This was the list of screenshots that I took showing all the different celebrity names that I had photographed. So you see February 12th, 2018, 10:24 a.m. I looked at Christina Applegate, Glenn Beck, Gerard Butler, Justin Bieber, Brad Pitt, Charlize Theron, Beyonce, Angelina, Taylor Swift, Kim Kardashian, Cardi B. I did many, many more as well. So this is what it was at first when I first looked at it on the 12th, in the photo that you saw, 5.15 million. I looked at Hillary Clinton, and again, YouTube is very different. Like Dude Perfect has 70 million views. A lot of people outside of that world don't even know who they are. They do trick shot videos. Anyway, Hillary Clinton was at 2.9 million. That was very, very shocking. I looked up the former president. He was at 6.9 million, so pretty close. Alex Jones was at 7.1 million. Nancy Pelosi was at 11.2, and the president was at 47.8 million. And then I looked again on Valentine's Day. You can see the logo there, and I was at 5.26 million. So I kept doing this. I looked at Hillary again. She was at 3.2. Alex Jones dropped by a million to 6.1. Barack Obama was a little bit less, 6.6. Nancy Pelosi dropped significantly in a couple of days. I don't know why, down to 7.5 million. The number one name I found on YouTube is Will Smith at 151 million. He fluctuates around that number. And again, I did another photograph after doing all this, and it was still at 5.26. Then I looked again on the day of the broadcast, which was the 15th, and it was at 5.98 million. Now, I'm only doing this to give you guys a criteria in which you can see I took multiple photographs. I looked at many other people as well, and this was what came up. So 3 days after the show, this is what happened after that broadcast that I just showed you. We go down to 256,000. And then I look at it again, and it keeps dropping. It goes down to 241,000, and then it goes down to 222,000, all within the span of a couple of days. This was totally unbelievable to me. Now, so how are we doing on cameras? Because I'm only seeing the tally light on the far left.
I can switch, but the tally
Yeah, okay, just switch them for me so I can see which one is running. Let's go to the wide shot again, just for... Okay, but the tally light's still on the left.
That's correct.
So I can't do anything. Okay, so just follow me on the cameras that I go to then, and I'll just ignore the tally lights. Okay. So the whole thing is pretty unbelievable. And why would somebody who's just talking about something as seemingly esoteric as Ascension be getting this type of resistance? Well, I believe that the real reason for this is my work in talking about the Alliance. And, oh, there we go. Now we got a tally light on it. That's great. So the QAnon stuff is very, very interesting, and they are in the midst of another big countdown right now, which seems to be leading up to some disclosures. We have gotten some really cool briefings on what's going on. Most of the weather control satellites have been reclaimed by the Alliance, and we are seeing wonderful results of that here in California, where it has been raining and raining and raining and raining and raining. If you've been following the news, we've had gigantic blooms of wildflowers in the middle of the most arid deserts. Death Valley, California, had a 10-mile-wide lake show up out of nowhere. We have had so much water that the idea of the drought is basically gone. Now, the Alliance insiders have referred to this as a rebound effect. The fact that we were getting this thing called a ridiculously resilient ridge for so long, where it appeared that microwave technology was being used to scare away all of the rain showers from the west coast of the United States, because this is where the food is being grown. So you have to understand that this comes back to Cold War stuff with these European bankers that run the deep state, feeling that America needed to take one on the chin because Europe took it on the chin in World War II. We are in a World War III right now. It's just not being publicized. And the really fascinating thing for me is that the QAnon briefings definitely appear to be real, and they definitely appear to be coming from the current U.S. administration. In fact, the current administration has done an incredible amount of stuff to try to make it very obvious to those who are following QAnon that it is them. They changed the call sign on Air Force One to Q0, and the 0 is the plus key on the keypad, and Q plus actually refers to the president himself. There was a very interesting video, as I've said before, from Trump Hotels, in which multiple clues were given. The whole video focuses on an elevator at one of the hotels that had been outfitted like a gingerbread house. And then inside the elevator, you have a fake fireplace with stockings. And one of the most prominent stockings in the video is the letter Q. And then also we have an image of Santa Claus who's holding a hammer. And there are all kinds of symbols and clues in this, and I'm going to go through that at some point. But there's been an enormous amount of work that's been done, including many, many examples where a tweet from the presidential office happens, and then a QAnon post goes up on 8chan as close together as possible. Delta, in mathematical terms, means a change in time. And so there's this goal on the 0 delta posting, where the time between when the tweet goes out and when the QAnon post goes out is nearly simultaneous, and they explained in the QAnon posts that they can't quite get it simultaneous. We are hearing from Kim.com, as I've said on my Edge of Wonder videos, which I highly recommend you see. Kim.com, who was very centrally involved in WikiLeaks, is in a position to know exactly what they're up to, has said that there is a huge data dump coming, and that is intel that we are getting as well. Plus, we're also getting intel that mid-level people in the deep state are already being brought to trial in tribunals. Those tribunals are taking place in multiple secret locations in the United States and apparently at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And those trials are starting on the mid-level, dealing with child trafficking, and specifically they are focusing on getting the people who were actually participating in these rings. A lot of this stuff was coming up through Mexico, through the drug cartel MS-13. What I learned from insiders is that typically you get drugs, human trafficking, and arms trafficking all in the same shipments. This is why there's such a concern over the border, because much of this human trafficking stuff has been coming through the border. So the declaration of national emergency was considered to be real, and it is very interesting to see the fight that has arisen. It was very interesting to see what was going on with the government shutdown that lasted longer than any other in history. And then I had said to you guys that there was going to be a declaration of a national emergency at the end. That is exactly what happened. This is because our intel is accurate, or at least predominantly accurate. So, all of this is leading up to major public announcements. QAnon has given us a countdown, and the countdown seems to be very imminent. So I don't know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, but when we get back to this thing with YouTube, and then that I was literally double Hillary Clinton in terms of the number of views, our live streaming platform got attacked. We lost almost 5.75 million videos that had my name in them, which was, again, only useful to show how significantly this message was getting out to the world, how many people were paying attention, because that represents engagement. People who actually thought enough to upload a video that had my name in it, and it's a really organic measurement of how much of a following you have. Anyway, this is not going to be another one that I get delayed into politics about. I really want to focus on the topic at hand, which is Ascension Q&A. So the first question that I have for you, this is going to cover a lot of different stuff, and what we did is we took your questions, you sent them in, and we had so many questions come in that we have had to break them down into the biggest ones that everybody was asking. So the first question is, what does Ascension mean? And there are other layers to this question that we can get into besides just that. But let's just start with the basics. Ascension, to me, is actually more difficult to describe than we would think. And the reason I say this is that there are gradual changes that are already visible, and then there are also what appear to be very spontaneous changes that will take place. The gradual changes occur both in terms of things like human evolution. I mentioned in a previous video Dr. John Hawkes, an anthropologist from University of Wisconsin, who showed that everybody is having a massive DNA upgrade, that in the last 5,000 years, the DNA molecule has evolved by 7% in its overall coding structure. That is a massive, massive amount. Very bizarre, very inexplicable in conventional terms. Our IQ scores are going up. Our skulls are actually getting larger. We've gained the volume of a tennis ball in brain volume just since the late 1800s. If you take a whole subset of skulls across America from that time up to the present, literally an entire tennis ball worth of volume of brain is how big our skulls have increased in size. This is stunning information. It's not being reported by the mainstream, but it doesn't mean it isn't true. And apart from IQ scores going up, brain volume going up, DNA evolving, we're also seeing major social changes. If you go back to my source text, which is the Law of One material, in the Law of One they talk about the idea of when these sudden surges of new, what they call fourth density energy occurs. And by taking one of the metrics, you can go back to 1939 as a date where there was a big surge, and it's interesting because that correlates with something that the Casey readings, Edgar Casey's readings, said as well. In 1939, we see the rise of Nazi Germany, and then the Law of One also explained that there was another rise in the early 1970s. That's where we see the gas crisis, the gap between rich and poor increasing, and Watergate. So what I'm saying is that it appears from studying the Law of One and how it applies to everything we're looking at, that these changes, when we get a surge of this new energy, you get the rottenness and the ugliness of the political spectrum being revealed much more. Nazi Germany brought this very dark undercurrent of politics to the surface. The world has never been the same since that happened. Same thing with Watergate. Same thing with the gas crisis, the gap between rich and poor. And we are seeing an unbelievable social renaissance right now of changes that are showing us the ugliness in the world. And what I find interesting also is that regardless of which side of the political spectrum you're on here in America, whether you're far left or far right, both sides are very excited because both sides feel that institutional corruption is being rooted out and exposed, and that we're heading up to something big. Regardless of who you are, regardless of your political affiliation, we can see now that there are really big events getting ready to happen. We are not in a normal period of history. Just over the weekend, a brand new Boeing 737 crashed. You may have seen this. 140 some people on board. They all died in Ethiopia. And it's a horrible, horrible disaster, and I feel very bad about it. But what you have to look for carefully is that there were a number, I think it was over 19 or 20 United Nations officials were on that plane. That looks really, really bad, especially when you're seeing that many countries are now grounding all of their Boeing aircraft. This very likely, because the plane was new, it shouldn't have had a failure, this was very likely a hacking. Just like vehicle hacking that we've heard about, every car from 2007 and on. 2006 is the newest car you can get where somebody can't actually drive you off the road and kill you in your car remotely, because they all have that OnStar thing like you saw with GM, and that has been made public, by the way. So it was very interesting too that the president's motorcade was going along and somebody crashed into the guardrail on the opposite side. Yet another of apparently many assassination attempts. The loss of the plane has caused many countries around the world to ground all of their Boeing aircraft because they're hip to the idea that this could have been an assassination using remote control. You don't do stuff like this unless you're really desperate. Now, do I think that the whole nationwide Facebook outage is because I was going to do a Facebook video? I have no idea. But it's really weird that we announced that, and then literally we can't get into Facebook and we can't do the show. So here we are on Twitter. So anyway, what I'm saying is that all of this relates directly to the idea of Ascension, because if you look at the Law of One model again and the dates they gave us, it very clearly tells us that when we get the surge of energy, we're getting the exposure of negativity on Earth. The QAnon stuff, whether you love it or hate it, it is exposing tons of things. There are so many juicy nuggets of intel coming through. There's so many things coming to light. This has become mainstream. This has become the news. So many people are aware that something big is going on, that there may be trials going on, there may be tribunals. We may be on the verge of mass declassification of all kinds of really cool information. So the question was, again, what does Ascension mean? And I said there are different ways to look at this. So there are gradual ways which involve DNA evolution, human evolution, consciousness evolution. There are social changes which relate again to the exposure of negativity in our world, and that also relates to the cycles of history research that I did in the second book I wrote, The Synchronicity Key. And then in addition, we also have the spontaneous version, which is this solar flash. It does appear that the sun is going to give off a big flash of white light. But don't just think about it as white light, think about it as a multi-dimensional energy. I went through all those ancient prophecies that talked about this in previous shows, and that multidimensional energy is what they're preparing us for. When I do the Ascension Mystery School, when you join me in that class, I'm going to go through some of the more contentious prophecies that I didn't really want to put out on the internet. So that's one of the things that you're going to see that I didn't go all the way there. Some of the stuff that I have to share with you is really, really wild. It's contentious, it's interesting, and it's not for mainstream consumption. But I can tell you a lot in a comfortable public forum like this. And there does appear to be this event coming up. We are seeing huge interplanetary climate change effects. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, they're all having very strange cloud effects and brightness increases. Magnetic field changes, the speed of the rotation on Saturn has changed. Very, very interesting stuff, all suggesting that they're heating up, they're getting more magnetized, they're getting more energetic. And it does appear that this is caused by us moving into a zone of higher energy in the galaxy. That is something that is related to this 25,000 year cycle that the Law of One talks about, which has to do with the drifting of the Earth on its axis, supposedly. It might actually be the whole solar system that is doing that. We can talk about that as well in the mystery school. But the 25,000 year cycle supposedly ended in 2012. And I thought that maybe December 21st, 2012, the end of the Mayan calendar, was going to be when this big solar flash would happen. It now appears that we have been delayed thanks to divine intervention with the arrival of these massive spheres, some of which were visible in the late 1990s. There was this guy, Kent Steadman, with a website, Cyberspace Orbit, and he was talking about how these sun cruisers, as he called them, these planet-sized objects, were coming in from around the sun. They would be as big as the other planets on SOHO, which was the satellite at the time. They'd move around in the course of 1 or 2 days, and then they would disappear. So apparently, those are extraterrestrial technologies that are holding off the solar flash for a little longer. I do believe that Corey Goode was contacted by extraterrestrials. I do believe that the messages that he got did not come from his imagination. And I believe that what they're telling us is true, that these spheres are here to hold off the solar flash until we are ready for it. With that being said, at most, we only have 10 years to go. So I'm just going to put that out there right now because it's either a solar maximum or a solar minimum. We appear to have just gotten through the solar minimum. It's an 11-year cycle before we get to the next maximum. And apparently the physics that have been done on this in the classified world shows the flash can only happen at a maximum or a minimum. But you see the references to the flash in Zoroastrianism, in Hinduism, in ancient Greek mythology, Roman mythology. It's referenced in Buddhism. It's referenced in Judaism, Christianity. The teachings of Christ talk about this extensively. There's a lot of stuff in the New Testament. And of course, Islam. And the Quran has some very interesting stuff about this as well. I don't push any one religion. I just show you how all the pieces fit together. All of these different religions appear to have been inspired by some type of cosmic intelligences that came to Earth. And they're all telling us the same thing. So I do believe that the core message of Christianity is the key to the ascension process. You don't need to get all wrapped up in the arcane stuff. We can get focused on one thing. Now, I'm being prompted with another question. Is ascension different based on one's faith? It's a good time for that question. So the answer is no. And this is something that they talk about in the Law of One, and my own contact experiences that I had from, let's say, it was 1996, November 10th, 1996, and I kept doing this pretty reliably through the end of 2001. I had a lot of these psychic readings similar to Edgar Cayce coming through. They would predict the future. That's what my whole book is that I'm working on right now. And so I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of alleged ET communication that came through me from 96 to 2001 before I retired from doing all of that stuff because I was worried about how much stress I had, that it might interfere with the accuracy of my communications. So that's why I stopped. And I would love to get my life de-stressed enough that I could try to do it again, but I'm definitely not there right now with all the crazy things that are going on. But it's very cool because these old messages are very relevant to today. I've been going through a 20-year time loop. There's a lot of things that are happening now that were predicted in readings going back to 1996, 1999, and thereabouts. It's very, very exciting, actually. Anyway, we are in a situation right now where I can look back on this stuff and see how, okay, they predict the future here, 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 and here. I'm going to write a whole book to document that in my own words for the first time since all those things happened. Because there's so many examples of prophecy that are so accurate, it's absolutely stunning. All this stuff about the mass arrests, the tribunals, and the alliance, I had very detailed readings coming through about this back in 1999. So some people are going to laugh at me and hate me, that's fine. The fact is, it's all documented, it's all there, and there's many prophecies that are very obviously real unless you are just so hardened as a skeptic that you can't see the truth. One of the things that the readings told me when I was having that happen was that it doesn't matter what faith you are. Everybody's going to go through a similar experience. When this multidimensional solar flash event takes place, apparently people will be contacted. You will have whatever your normal reality is, the waking reality, that's going to disappear like you're in a discontinuous psychedelic trip, basically. The world that you're seeing with your eyes is not there anymore. You go into another parallel reality and you have a meeting with whatever is a form of divine intelligence in a visual, kinesthetic way that inspires you the most. You will be meeting with that face to face. Some people are going to see Buddha. Probably a lot of people are going to see Jesus. It really depends on where you are at. And what does your own inner Christ consciousness, the same consciousness that came into Jesus, the same consciousness that I believe is accessible to others, as the Edgar Cayce reading said, what does your Christ appear to you as being? Now, the Jesus teachings appear to be the closest that we got in terms of actually showing us what the cosmic mind of the one infinite creator, this cosmic intelligence that made the universe, what does it actually think? How does it behave? What is its personality? I believe that Jesus embodies that personality, but I also believe that there are other great teachers who have gotten pretty close. When you get in the Law of One, it very specifically describes that Jesus was an embodiment of the Logos, and it even was a quote that Jesus said, I am the Logos, or I am the Word. I am the Logos made flesh. So in the Law of One, there's a really cool thing where they talk about that the Logos is the mind of the galaxy. So the Law of One doesn't really hit you in the face with it, but they come around the edge and they say there's a cosmic Christianity here where what we got in Jesus was an embodiment of the galactic creative mind. So then in the book of Genesis it says, in the beginning there was the Logos, and the Logos was God, and the Logos was with God. The Law of One also explains that there is a cosmic Logos, the one infinite creator, which Christians would call the Father, and then the Son would be the galactic Logos. So this actually answers a religious paradox, which is, could this Christ consciousness appear on other planets in the galaxy as well, if they also have humans on them? And the answer is yes, because it's an embodiment of the galactic mind. So it's a galactic Christianity, if you will. And that's really how I see it. So you don't want to ignore those messages. This is the time of times. This is what you have been living multiple incarnations to build up to. This is it. It's now or never. We are in the runway. We are boarding this plane. And this thing is going to happen. My research is absolutely conclusive. I had so many of these accurate prophecies which came true, and the biggest prophecy is Ascension, the solar flash, set me on a quest of many years researching the data to show that that solar flash is real. We see it in interplanetary climate change. We understand the physics of the solar flash. We found all the ancient religious prophecies, And it really comes down to you. Do you believe it? Do you believe that this is going to happen? We have another question here that I'm getting on a card. What are the main obstacles to ascension in the modern world? And hate, distraction, materialism. Now that is one of the questions. What are the obstacles? So I don't know where it is in our slideshow. I got to try to keep to the slides here. Anyway, the main obstacles to ascension are a lot of things, but it relates very much to the Christian message. And again, I don't get into all the fundamentalist stuff. I'm not going to tell you have to follow one religion at all. But what I am saying is that we ought to pay attention to something like the message of Jesus, because it's a very heavy situation that has inspired the world, and the message is actually really simple. We are the ones that make it complicated. Forgiveness in the Law of One is the key. There's a great quote in the Law of One where it says, "In forgiveness lies the stoppage of the wheel of karma." And the wheel of karma is this cycle that we keep repeating, where we keep suffering needlessly at our own hand. And we have successes in life, but then we collapse, and we have to go through another cycle, and we have to repeat going through the dark night of the soul, losing everything, being betrayed, having people hate you, and then you got to climb your way back up and build your way into another level of success, and then boom, you get hit again, and you get hit again, and the wheel goes around and around. The only way you get off that wheel is forgiveness. And forgiveness is not something that these deep state guys appreciate. It is the hardest spiritual discipline. They think of themselves as illuminated, as enlightened, but they are very, very bad on forgiveness. In fact, they hold grudges, they are vindictive, and they have tried to incur that type of mindset into our society by having this very reactive media where we're constantly being triggered. If it bleeds, it leads. And so we are being deluged with distractions. Push notifications on your phone. The smartphone works just like slot machines in Vegas. The more push notifications you have, the more distracted you get, the more that you're constantly looking at your phone. You never really let go of the phone. It's becoming something that people are aware of as a big problem. I barely use the smartphone at all. In fact, there are entire days where I don't pick it up. I don't really get involved in social media, as you guys probably know. I will make posts on it, but you gotta live your own life. I don't spend most of my time thinking about the fact that I'm a public figure, that I have millions of people following my work. I try to live a pretty normal life. This is our living room, and this is also my studio, so it's all happening right here. So there's a lot of these different blockages, and we're going to go through that in the Ascension Mystery School. But in short, it's the spirit of service to self. That's how Law of One describes it. Service to self is the key. Let me go to the second question now in the slides, which is, we already had that one. What are the main obstacles to ascension in the modern world? Okay. The third question that I have in the slides is, should I be worried about the upcoming ascension event? Well, now again, we did this because these are the questions that everybody is asking the most. Now I get how heavy this is, and I will start by saying you better believe that the people in the deep state are very, very worried about the solar flash. So I want to be clear on this, and I'm happy to say this publicly because this may become an issue of global significance at some point. The people in the deep state do believe that the sun is going to give off a massive flash. Many of them believe it will be 1,000 degrees Celsius, that it will wipe out the Earth's atmosphere, and that you either have to be underground or off-planet in some walled-off facility, that the surface of the Earth is going to take a tremendous clobbering, and life will not be viable on the surface. Now, this is where I differ from them. Now, this is really the main reason why, other than the possibility of them doing their own nuclear war, this is the main reason why they built an elaborate underground city complex with over 235 cities that are all interconnected with these sub-shuttle train systems, okay? Those underground networks are intended for them to survive this solar flash. That's the main reason why they did it. They were getting messages about this way back. It does appear, by the way, that the third secret of Fatima from those children in Portugal back in whatever it was, 1913, 1914, thereabouts, it does appear that the third secret of Fatima is the solar flash. And it does appear the very first witness that came forward on Project Camelot, Mr. X, if you watch that original Mr. X video, and I've written about it in, I think, each of my 3 published books, Mr. X said that he saw documents from the 1950s going back to ET meetings with Eisenhower, in which the ETs told Eisenhower, you guys can cover up the truth of UFOs if you want, but after the year 2012, something will happen, and then we will appear in front of everyone, and there's nothing you can do about it. So there does appear to be a cosmic Noah's Ark rescue plan in place. That the majority of all the extraterrestrial life that's out there, that's around the Earth now, is benevolent and angelic. That it is a positive source. And that source is what we would think of as angelic. There are angels in the Bible. There's angels in the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Quran. Buddhism has them. Everybody has them. Everybody has gods. Everybody has ancient astronauts, hence the ancient astronaut theory, right? But I believe that if you're really going to get into the grand puzzle of ufology, ancient civilizations, conspiracy analysis, all these different subjects, the grand unified model that solves all the problems where every single piece of this puzzle fits together in a grand mosaic, that is Ascension. It's the fact that something is coming. Our solar system is changing, the Earth is changing, we're seeing that with this crazy climate change, the polar vortex. It got very cold in America, many places still are. Very, very cold right now, much colder than usual. We're getting all this weird rain in California. The Earth is not going to be a normal place to live much longer. And the solar flash is really the kicker. So there's a cosmic Noah's Ark. The idea being Noah's Ark might have actually been a lot more than just the typical boat that it's normally described as. You know, getting my hair all stood up like Giorgio on Ancient Aliens. I believe Noah's Ark was a spaceship. And I believe that that's going to happen again, and it's a metaphor of people being taken off planet. So that appears to be the cosmic interstellar plan, and we are certainly dealing with the ramifications of all that right now in terms of how you are affected by the changes that are happening in your life day by day. The Ascension process is a moment-to-moment process. So I'm being prompted for another question, which I think is in the slideshow somewhere. How can I prepare my children and family for Ascension? So that ties into the question that I've already been answering. So we'll continue along this thread. Do you need to worry about this? I believe the answer is no. All of the ancient prophecies that were so much care has been put in to seeding this information, according to Santillan and Van de Shen, 2 historians, 35 different ancient cultures that have this Ascension prophecy. Everything we've ever seen, basically, the whole world, they all talk about it. That appears to be these benevolent, angelic beings that are extraterrestrials, if you want to think of them that way. They are flesh and blood. They are thinking and feeling the same way as the great teachings of Christ, as the great teachings of the other religions, when they focus on love, forgiveness, compassion, spiritual enlightenment through being a kind and loving person. So I believe that this whole thing that's coming our way is divinely ordained. It is a positive event. It is not negative. It is not to be feared. It is not to be hidden away from. I'm not going to tell you that you need to get a shelter underground or that you need to be on some kind of mothership. It does appear that extraterrestrials do show up to help us through this transformation, but they're already multidimensional. And so if there is a dimensional shift that the sun is going to take us through, I want you to be able to prepare for that. There are simple levels to the message, depending on whether we're going for the field goal ascension, which is basically 3D to 4D, or whether you're going for the touchdown, which is the possibility of springboarding, as the Law of One describes, from 3D to 5D, from 3D to 6D, or even from 3D to 7D, which is the last density before you go back to full universal consciousness, okay? So the simple teachings to make sure that you're going to make it through the 4th density upgrade that happens during the flash are very simple. And I have no problem sharing that with you without the Ascension Mystery School. It really is service to others. It's as simple as, are there a little bit more than 50% of your thoughts and actions that are oriented towards service to others, helping people, being kind, being forgiving, being loving? It's really that easy. And bear in mind the teaching of the glass ceiling, which means that whatever you are thinking is seen by both the positive and the negative side of this war. There are no secrets, nothing can be hidden. So you either have to keep your mind focused on the positive, or when you go negative, everybody in the higher realms knows this. The negative side, the positive side, because there are negative higher realms as well, which gets into these negative ETs that the secret space program people are very aware of, such as reptilian types, insectoid types, the greys. There are some very nasty guys out there, in addition to the human-looking ones that are more benevolent. And that's a very simplified explanation. There are other types of beings that are benevolent as well, including insectoid types, including actually certain very specific reptilian species as well, but the vast majority of the reptilians and insectoids that we're dealing with are bad guys, okay? As are the greys, although they appear to be run by other beings as sort of like little robots, genetic robots. Yes? Okay, that gets into, I'm going to get to that because we have questions on the slides. So how to tell your kids, how to get through the thing with your kids. Basically, I would say just teach your kids to be loving and compassionate people. If they have the opportunity to retaliate, to be nasty, don't let them go there. Keep them focused on the positive, because the basic 4D field goal ascension just requires that a little bit more than 50% of your thoughts are loving. You could be 49% evil, 49% manipulative, conniving, deceptive, betraying, self-serving, lying, cheating, stealing. But if you're 51% forgiving, compassionate, loving, you're still good to go. That's one level of the message that I want everybody to get, but when you get into what does it take to get to 5D or to 6D or even 7D, it's a lot more complicated, and the teachings in the Law of One get very intricate and very specific. So with your kids, again, I would say you're not going to be teaching them about 5D and 6D stuff. I mean, you could once you learn what it is, but basically the focus is on keeping them positive. If they're being bullied, get them to try to deal with it in a peaceful way, get them to think lovingly about the people that are attacking them. Don't let them get dwelling in negativity. Okay, the fourth question that I have here is as follows. How do we get narrow-minded family and friends to open up to the idea of ascension and the other concepts that you teach? This is a really great question. And the answer is the rule of 10%. You give people a little bit at a time. The biggest problem that I see so often in our community is people want to drop a massive disclosure onto somebody who doesn't know anything, and you will never succeed that way. What you try to do is drop 10% of what you want to say. Just say really one or two very basic concepts. Give them a scientific data point. Give them something that is concrete and tangible and provable, okay? And then stop and let them ruminate on that for a while. Let them think about it for a while. If they come back with a question, if they come back with interest, give them 10% more. Engage them. Don't just bulldoze through with a big monologue, because that will never ever succeed. That is the guaranteed recipe for failure. And we could talk about this a lot more. We probably will in the Ascension Mystery School, but let's have another question. Okay, so the fifth question now is as follows. There's a two-part question actually. How is it possible for us to ascend within this incarnation if we don't have the time to do that? And then also, do we have to master the 10th and upper dimensions as well in order to ascend? Okay, so the second question there is one that you can tell I already answered. There's different types of ascension. So bear in mind that if you ascend directly into 5D, 6D, or 7D in Law of One terms, you have leapfrogged over hundreds of thousands of years worth of work that it would have taken you to do that in the higher realms. So it's very, very significant if you can make that jump, because you are saving yourself eons and eons of time. And the law of one explains that life is so hard in this third dimensional reality that it's actually very poignant. You could go through one big life crisis and then actually be able to heal something that would take a long time in the higher realms. In other words, you work through one big problem, you work through one big issue, and you're discharging potentially thousands of years of karma that it would take you in the higher realms. So there's a really big incentive to want to get this stuff nailed down. That also means that what you're going through in your life right now is very probably the initiation of all time. In other words, you are having the big showdown with all of your multi-incarnational karma. Everything is coming to a head. Everything is reaching critical mass. You're getting nailed harder than you've ever been nailed before. No pressure, right? But the benefit is that if you can work through these issues and come out on top, somehow we found our way on a Twitter Periscope and we're still talking live, so we did our part on this one. If you can get through that, you have really great spring-loaded ascension capability coming your way. Now, the first question, how is it possible for us to ascend within this incarnation if we don't have the time? Wow. The Law of One speaks extensively on the concept of busyness. There's a whole section in there about it, and the idea that you really do want to try to reduce your overall stress load. You want to try to find yourself being more relaxed, having greater peace, and you don't have to do less work. It's about your attitude of how you approach the work. How do you engage the tasks in your life? How do you deal with the everyday realities of life? How do you cope with those things? How do you come out of it on top? How do you remain smiling? And there are practical tools that we're going to share with you for all that stuff in the Ascension Mystery School. But a very basic one I'll give you right now is that whenever you find yourself getting overwhelmed, don't keep pushing. Step back for 5 minutes, let yourself breathe, step away from the problem. There's very few problems that you can't step away from for 5 minutes. Take a few breaths and figure out what's going on and then get back in. Like we tried to launch this Periscope thing, we'd never done it before. You can't really preview it. And then we had to figure out, okay, it's not working. We read something online, found out there's 2 additional steps we had to do in our software to make it go. So we stepped back, we took a breath, 5 minutes. We were a little bit late getting started, but now here we are and it works. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. You take a little time, it's not that big of a deal, you know, you can step back from it, you can breathe, and you can work through the problem. All right, let's go up to the 6th question now. And this one is, oh, it's the same one, sorry. I guess my slides got messed up. So we're going to go now straight to the 7th question. Is ascension synonymous with spiritual development? Why is ascension important? And how does ascension reduce suffering? Okay. So yes, I would say that the earth is a school, and we are here to learn to love one another. That is the basic bottom line. If you are in combat with other people, if you are in conflict, if you're arguing, if there's drama, then you really need to try to figure out how can you be more forgiving, how can you be more peaceful, how can you be more loving. And definitely, if you're participating in hatred online, that kind of stuff, if you're in combat, if you're lashing out, that is really not going to help the ascension process at all. A spiritually evolved being is a being who can be forgiving of others and forgiving of yourself. That's another really important point. Much of the ascension process, when you really get down to it, and how do you get to be more loving than manipulative and self-serving in your basic thoughts and behaviors, it really does come back to, as I said in one of the previous live broadcasts, loving yourself. Loving yourself is the bullseye. All the other esoteric, crazy stuff that we could talk about doesn't do you any good if you don't nail down the fundamentals. It's just like if you don't know scales, if you don't have a basic idea of the scales of the major scale or the minor pentatonic blues scale if you're trying to play rock and roll, you're not going to be able to play music. You have to learn the fundamentals. The fundamental of spiritual growth is loving yourself. And once you can be able to love yourself when you don't have negative thoughts about yourself, then, as I was saying before, you're not going to be projecting your shadow or your anima, which is your female, feminine, spiritual aspect, or your animus, your male spiritual aspect, you're not going to project that onto others. You're going to accept the shadow within yourself, accept the divinity of your masculine and feminine side within yourself without needing to have heroes and without needing to have villains. When people are opposing us, as we see with this deep state thing, yeah, we want to deal with that. But I also do believe in amnesty. I do believe in these people being brought through a healing process on a very basic level. So is Ascension synonymous with spiritual development? Yeah, I'll be there in a second. Is Ascension synonymous with spiritual development? And the answer is yes. The more evolved you become as a soul, the more that Ascension will be a part of your life. You are on the Ascension path. You're going to start getting synchronicity. You'll see repeating numbers on clocks, license plates, your odometer when you're driving your car, on your computer. All kinds of weird stuff starts to happen. All these synchronicities start to happen. That means you're on the path. You're being activated. You'll have these really, really amazing dreams. You'll bump into people in weird places at weird times. Things just line up, okay? So, yes, if you are at all making spiritual growth, you should be getting these kinds of things. You should be having these experiences. And if you're not, then I would caution you to dive into forgiveness, dive into love, let go of your judgment, let go of the victim mentality. Don't project your shadow onto other people. Pull your projections back in through self-acceptance. Why is Ascension important? Very simple. It's happening. The science is amazing. The prophecies are amazing. There's so much data showing that this thing is real and that this is going to happen. I absolutely do believe this is true. I am not a snake oil salesman. I am not making this stuff up. I've got 3 books, 2,000 academic references. This is heavily documented. I've done 600 plus television episodes on these topics. There's a lot of data, a lot of time. This is a life's work that's gone into this, summarizing the great big picture from all these different spiritual traditions around the world, and I do absolutely believe this is real. How does Ascension reduce suffering? That's the next question, and that's also a simple answer. As long as you are reincarnating in third density, you have to keep being born in a human body with the veil of forgetfulness in place. That's another law of one term regarding this idea that you forget who you really are. You don't remember your past lives. You don't remember that you have a spiritual mission. You're kind of taking a crapshoot with the parents that you get. They might end up being abusive. Usually we get abused as children. We deal with these childhood traumas. We are shaped by our experiences. And maybe we're going to get back on track with the spiritual agenda, but maybe we're going to accrue additional karma. And as long as we are participating in consciously unloving acts and thoughts towards other people, we are building new karma. That needs to be avoided. So what we don't want to do is to keep reincarnating in this world, in third density, and keep going through this, because once you have learned what you're here for, once you get that this is a spiritual class, and you understand that there's a graduation, and you don't have to keep doing this anymore, then you get to come back as an ascended being. Now you have superhero ability, maybe not immediately, but within a relatively short time, you're going to be able to levitate. You're going to be able to use telekinesis. You'll have telepathic communication. You can travel in time. You're going to have access to much, much better technology. It's an amazing, amazing change. As significant, the Law of One says, as the difference between animals and people. The change in consciousness for Ascension of what we are now compared to what we become is literally that big. That's why they say that fourth density life, which is just the one level above where we are now, is already 100 times more harmonious than what life in the third density is already like. So Ascension reduces suffering completely. You're not going to have to come back and get decapitated, get your limbs chopped off, get raped, get abused, get betrayed. Life in fourth density is really cool. The Law of One tells us that the earth is moving into a realm of total harmony and peace. You're not going to have people hating on you. You're not going to have corrupt, evil governments that are the opposite of the teachings of the great spiritual and religious masters. We live in an enlightened society where people are compassionate, forgiving, loving to one another, where we all kind of see things equally, and we're able to go out there and teach and spread the message and do positive things. Okay, let's go up to question number 8 now. which is, how can I prepare my children and family for Ascension? Well, we actually went through that one already, so we don't need to do that again. Let's go up to question number 9 now. Question number 9. In Ascension, how do we protect ourselves from intentional psychic attacks in this realm and beyond this realm? Well, this is a very, very significant question. Psychic attacks are essentially a defining element of what you're going to be dealing with as you go further and further down on the Ascension path. And because in many ways we are on the tip of the spear, if you have 6 million videos on YouTube, twice the number of Hillary Clinton, right up there with former presidents, right up there with major, major political and public figures, celebrities and so forth. This work is getting out there, and it bleeds into our life. So both my wife Elizabeth and I are dealing with these psychic attacks all the time. It's crazy how much stuff is happening. It's crazy the level of interference, the level of disruptiveness, the level of stress, the level of pressure. I can't even begin to describe. I've been updating my publisher now because I'm late on the delivery of the manuscript as to all the things that are going on to delay me writing this book. And it's basically now like a daily diary that I'm sending them. And they're like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I'm so sorry, David. I'm so sorry. Yeah, this is what's going on. And then there's this, and then there's this. And I have this dental procedure, and it's 300% worse than anything I've ever been through in my whole life. And I've had to take codeine a couple times because the pain is so extreme. It just goes on and on and on. I couldn't leave it the way it was because, as I said, I had dentin, not even enamel, on my molars, and if I chew almonds, I'm feeling pain. Okay, it was that bad. I had exposed roots of my teeth over here. I go to this gum surgeon, and I find out that I've got bone loss in my jaw, which will only heal once I get the gum surgery. Those are just little things. I mean, psychic attack is very real, and in the Law of One, they explain that it's the glass ceiling. All of your thoughts are available to both sides of the spiritual spectrum. So the good guys and the bad guys both know what you're thinking. So when you have positive thoughts, positive beings will come in and nudge you to be more positive. But when you start going in a negative direction, negative beings are authorized to infiltrate your thoughts, to try to get you to become more angry, more jealous, more vindictive, more possessive, more aggressive, more violent. They can, and they do, jump in. And when somebody gets into a full shadow projection and you become angry and you're screaming and you have a temper tantrum, you could literally be embodying a negative spirit, a negative entity, a reptilian, yes. You could literally be doing that. You could literally be channeling that being as you're yelling and screaming and carrying on. This happens all the time, okay? The Law of One talks about this. It is analogous to these little beings on each shoulder. You got the good guy over here, the bad guy over here, and it's which one are you going to listen to? And there's some really cool stuff in the Law of One that we're going to get into in the Ascension Mystery School about how that works. That almost gets into the category of stuff that's a little bit too heavy to share with the public, but suffice it to say that you have to be really careful about letting yourself ever indulge in negativity. Because as soon as you do, you are being influenced. But then also, the negative will create physical disruption. There will be negative synchronicity. There will be events that take place because you are being tampered with. You will have your car not wanting to start. You'll have weird, unanticipated problems. You'll have negative things that crash into your life that require your full attention, and they force you to up your game, to be stronger, to be more wise. The Alliance is going through this as well. Their goal to defeat the deep state, to bring this all out in the public, has been very, very rough. It is a fight to the death against the deep state. So many of the soldiers that are involved in this and the operatives, the intelligence agents involved in this effort have had monumental setbacks. People are dying. There's been morale problems in the Alliance, but I do believe that it's going to succeed. They are going to move forward with this thing, and that is an essential part of our overall Ascension process. So let's now go to the 10th question. The 10th question is, how dangerous is it to open your third eye? Let me just pause for a drink here. Now, there was more to this question that I didn't put into the slide, But the core of it was there are practices that people can use in which you can pretty quickly open up your psychic centers. Some of those practices do involve the ingestion of psychedelic drugs. And if you do that stuff, you are potentially putting yourself at risk of having very negative spiritual events take place. I remember a friend of mine in high school who had actually gotten sober from drugs, and he inspired me to get sober as well, ultimately. We had a band together for a little while called Jimmy Christ, believe it or not. And anyway, Jimmy was, he told me a story about being on LSD, and they went into a graveyard, and one of his friends was lying on top of a grave, and that he saw this demonic, terrifying presence come over the guy's face. The whole thing turned into this absolutely terrifying monster. And it freaked him out so much that that was the final catalyst that led to him getting sober. Those kind of things can happen, especially if you do those weird drugs. You can have very crazy stuff happen. And also, you don't want to be top heavy in Law of One terms, which means if you really start to do a lot of work to try to open your third eye, if you're opening up the higher chakras too much without balancing the lower chakras along the way, you can get into what actually could be like a schizophrenia type of situation. So the real key is the balanced working. To open up the lower chakras, and in the Ascension Mystery School, we're going to go through each of the 7 centers, what they mean, what are the basic lessons you need to understand for each of those centers. It really does basically come down to self-acceptance and how you treat other people, how you take care of your body, your diet, your exercise. You have to get these things nailed down. You have to get to a minimum basic level with your lower chakras, including the heart chakra of being open, before you can go into the higher levels. If you try to just really focus on meditation and these esoteric disciplines without opening up the lower chakras first, you can be subject to very unpleasant experiences. So I highly recommend that you go for the balanced approach, and that if you're going to do intense meditation or that kind of thing, that it come in conjunction with a holistic approach where you're healing your whole body and you're healing your relationships, you're forgiving those that need to be forgiven, you're dealing with past childhood traumas. We'll talk a lot more about that and how to cope with that stuff in the Ascension Mystery School. All right, 11th question. Do you think the whole world will fall in line with Ascension? If not, what will happen to those who do and those who don't? How does this work? Okay, this is another one of those really, really big foundational questions that matter tremendously to our investigation. Do I think the whole world will fall in line with Ascension? Absolutely not. Most people are not ready for this. Most people are what the Law of One would call confused, where they are stuck between service to self and service to others. You have to be 95% service to self to make it into the negative 4D. There is a 4D negative and a 5D negative. Then after 5D negative, you have to discharge the negative and go positive, or else in Law of One terms, your soul literally dissolves, okay? But to go 4D positive or above, you have to be at least 51% service to others, meaning that at least 51 out of 100 thoughts that you have are loving thoughts about yourself and other people. Most people are not there. Most people in Law of One terms are confused, which means that you're somewhere between service to self and service to others. So maybe you would be, let's say, 65% service to self, 35% service to others. You think you're a good person because 35% of what you do is loving. About 1 out of 3 actions are loving. But 2 out of 3 actions inside your head, you're angry at people, you're judging people, you're combative, your ego is very fragile, you're easily offended, you can't handle stress. When you get stress, you become a negative person, you start to get reactive. The people around you might not enjoy being around you all the time. The Law of One makes it very clear that the people who are Ascension compatible will have an unusually radiant personality. You're going to have a spiritual consciousness that makes other people feel good when they're around you. You are fun to be around. You are exciting to be around. You make people laugh. You make people smile. All these things are very essential. So yeah, most people are not ready, and they're not going to get ready in a couple of years. However, the mass arrest scenario, disclosure, the possibility of suppressed information about UFOs and ancient civilizations going public, does raise the possibility that many people will have a last-minute spiritual awakening. And if you get what all this is really about, it's going to make you more like Christ. It's going to make you more like Buddha. It's going to make you more like Muhammad. It's going to make you more like Krishna. You're going to be a person who's more loving, more forgiving, more peaceful, more enlightened. And that's good. That's what we're all ultimately striving for. So again, the Law of One teaches us that this whole world is an illusion, and that it's really the greatest use that anybody's getting out of this world is if you are ascending. Because then you are ascending within a dream. Hence my new book is called Awakening in the Dream. You are waking up in a society that tries to shut you down, that tries to keep you asleep. And you look around you and you're horrified because everything is so obviously not true. Everything is manipulated, distorted. You're being lied to, you're being controlled. Your food is being poisoned, the sky is being poisoned. Thank God. One of the briefings that we've gotten, by the way, is that most of those chemtrail spraying planes have been grounded by the Alliance. If the deep state tries to use weather control satellites now, they will very likely be shot down. But the chemtrail planes are very difficult to stop completely because they have so many of them. So that's one of the last things before it really gets stopped, but a lot of chemtrail operations have ceased. So what happens to the people who are not going to be ready for 4D? It appears that in this cosmic Noah's Ark scenario, that they will be normally moved. It's not really normal by any normal stretch, but you will have an organic experience. Everybody has this experience where you meet up with these cosmic beings, these loving beings, and if you're not ready to go to 4D on Earth, then you will be relocated to another planet. And this will all happen in your conscious experience. So regardless of where you're going, you're going to have a really, really amazing time, and it's going to be very exciting. But the Earth is going to go into a frequency level, if you will, fourth density, in which you have to have a light body or you can't be here. You literally could not hold a physical body. Your body would vaporize. You have to be in a light body to stay on Earth as it goes through this change. Your biological form wouldn't make it. That's a very important law of 1 point. So there is this planetary relocation program, and that is another thing that we will cover a little more in the Ascension Mystery School. Okay, we got that coming up in the next slide, or one of the next ones. 12th question. Here we go. Specifically, what topics will you be talking about in the Ascension Mystery School that you have never talked about before? And that's a really good question. A lot of people are asking that because it's like, well, you know, I've seen other stuff of David. I've seen his television shows. I've seen his articles. I've read his books. Is this new, or is this just more of the same old, same old? So to be specific, most of the time when I talk about this subject, I go scientific or I go disclosure. I'm either talking about the science of ascension, I'm talking about the deep state and the cabal being exposed by the Alliance, I'm talking about the war for disclosure, or I'm talking about the secret space program, off-planet civilizations, cosmic beings, and what's going on and how does it relate to disclosure in our future, fighting for the repressive suppressed technology, fighting for the release of suppressed technology, all that kind of stuff. That is not what this class is about. This class is really going to drill in even more to the actual philosophical discussions. The biggest complaint that I've had at conferences and in emails over the years that I get from people is they say, okay, David, I believe you. You've proven that this is really going to happen. I want to get really in to the data about what does it take to be prepared for this thing. What are the esoteric teachings? What is the knowledge? What's the philosophy? What's the spiritual practices? Well, here's the problem. Some of this stuff gets contentious. Some of the stuff in the Law of One is not mainstream, and I wouldn't want to put it out there on the mainstream level. In fact, There's a couple great Law of One quotes that I can pull right now. One says, with the acquisition of great wisdom also comes great loneliness. And another Law of One quote that I really love that we're going to use again in the school is, true freedom is seen by those not free as being negative or evil. What does that mean? That means the more you acquire wisdom, the more difficult it is to relate to other people. You may have noticed this, of course. And true freedom, what is it? Then you get into the question of what really is true freedom, and what does it mean when somebody is not free? It's really bizarre to me how much I get attacked online for basically the same two issues. It's been this way for 23 years. Oh my God, David has a big ego. Oh my God, David is making money. I worked as hard as I could to try to keep things inexpensive. In fact, when I did psychic readings for people from 98 to 2005, it was only $150. And I couldn't even do enough to be able to pay my taxes. I couldn't do enough to have a stable livelihood. I was working full-time for other people. I was giving them readings, and I could not pay my bills. I had bouncing fees all the time. I had old tax problems that now I've had to fix. There's been all kinds of crazy stuff I've had to do to get that problem solved. So my point is, I meditated for many years on humility, and I meditated for many years on how could I be more humble? Because everybody is telling me, be more humble, be more humble, be more humble. And after a while, what I realized is, okay, part of true humility is being a sacred warrior. Having the humility to offer your life in sacrifice to a greater initiative, to a greater good. We are not making it up about how much we have fought, about the death threats that we go through, about the incredible resistance that we endure. That is totally real. That stuff is not going away. It's going to keep on happening. And it probably is going to keep getting worse. So this is a fight to the death. And I think a lot of people misinterpret the confidence that I have of having studied this all my life with narcissism or ego. And so all I can say to that again is, I've done my very best. You'll notice I do not hit out against other people in my community. If there's someone who I believe is not telling the truth, I do not publicly out them. I do not criticize them. I don't plot against people. I don't plot covertly behind their backs. I genuinely let go of it. When people don't like me or they don't like my work, there's people who are out there making video after video after video attacking me. I know who they are. I'm never going to talk about them. I'm never going to acknowledge that they're doing this because I don't want to get engaged in those fights. I don't believe it's productive. So as far as the making money thing is concerned, you have to be able to finance your operations to make a difference in this world. Up until now, we have lived in a world that requires money. Once we get through this ascension process, that won't happen. We will be in a moneyless society. Everybody will live like a billionaire. You'll be able to live like a billionaire. I've seen some really amazing mansions. I've seen $50 million homes. You'll be able to create anything like that that you want. You will be able to make your life exactly the same as any billionaire's life is right now on Earth. You want to manifest a private jet? Fine. You want to manifest a private train? Fine. You want to have a super yacht? Fine. You want to have a $100 million mansion? Fine. You can do whatever you want. So we don't need to be focused on all of this stuff of like fighting and combating one another. And so again, the core question is, what are you going to talk about that you've never talked about before? The answer is everything. The Law of One teachings get really contentious. There's some stuff in there that like people are going to freak out about if it was made public on a general level. So the payment is part of the initiation to get into the mystery school. You have to go through something. You have to show that you want to hear this stuff. It's not just going to be free. It's not just going to be thrown out on the internet, because the Law of One quotes that I'm going to get through, the discussion of what they are, when I get into what is true freedom and why do people who are not free see it as being negative or evil, I'm touching a little on it right now. When I get into what's really going to happen with the solar flash, where it's taking us, when I get into the physical effects of that, when I get into some of the spiritual practices, the cord cutting ceremonies that you're going to have to do, the weeding out of toxic relationships, all this kind of stuff, it can get pretty contentious. So there's a lot of things that I'm going to bring up that I have not talked about before. Question number 13 is, will we have lifetime access to the replays? The answer is yes. The actual show will be available for download for 1 year on the link that you will have once we get to that point. We have a special thing set up. We have limitless bandwidth, so no matter how many people try to watch it live, it'll be fine. We're not going to crash. And you will have access to it for 1 year. We are going to immediately load these classes into YouTube for Content ID protection. So if people try to steal it and re-upload it, don't bother, it won't work. And after that 1 year, during that whole time, you will be able to download those copies and store them on your local hard drive, and that'll be fine for you. After 1 year, it will not be online anymore. All you have to do is have downloaded it, and that's not difficult at all. 14th question. Will there be a Q&A after each Ascension Mystery School session? The answer is yes. During the class, while I'm talking, you can send in your questions. You can send in your thoughts, your concerns. We will be processing that in real time, and most likely Elizabeth, we will have a little rapport at the end where she's going to read me the questions that you guys have had, and we will be going through those at the end of the session. So it will be interactive, and we will go with the questions that are the most interesting, the most common. So you do have a chance in every session to have your question addressed, and we will also give name credit to whatever degree you want if your question gets called upon. So that will happen, and hopefully everybody will get a chance to feel like their questions are answered, because we're going to focus on the ones that are the most common. We'll have a whole team of people analyzing your feedback as I do it. We'll get a digest version of what's the best stuff at the end. Question number 15. What are the dates of the course? Well, I built this into the slide, so here we go. Drum roll, please. The first class is going to be Sunday, March 24th at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Thank God it's standard time, not daylight savings. F daylight savings. We are done with that SHIT. Sunday, March 31st, a week later, 11 a.m. So every Sunday, it's like a church service, if you will. Sunday, April 7th, my brother's birthday, 11 a.m. Happy birthday, Michael. Sunday, April 14th, 11 a.m. Sunday, April 21st, 11 a.m. Those are the 5 basic modules. And then last but not least is the I Told You So party, which is TBD, to be determined. And that's after the Ascension event has actually happened, where we all get to give each other a hug and be amazed at the fact that we actually landed this plane, we got through this thing, the sun did its thing, the earth becomes a positive spiritual place, a true divine kingdom, and we make it with however many people have been able to ascend. Hopefully the numbers will go up, but the Law of One says don't expect that most people are going to make this thing. Most people are going to be redoing third density on another planet. Question number 16 now. Here we go. When does the enrollment for Ascension Mystery School close? And the answer is that it closes on Wednesday, March 20th at the stroke of midnight. So you only have 1 week from today if you want to sign up for this. And again, I highly recommend it. I am not going to hold anything back. I've had a lot of feedback over the years that I focus too much on the science, too much on the disclosure, too much on the cabal, too much on the negative, not enough on the philosophy, not enough on the personal growth, not enough on the practical teachings. That's what this class is really about. Yes, there's going to be some orientation in the first 2 modules about the science of the whole thing so that your rational mind is not left out. You have a criteria to believe something is happening, but really the focus is on the practical spiritual teachings. And again, 4D is easy. If you're a nice person, consistently, you're going to make it. Don't worry about that. It's more about how do you activate 5D, how do you activate 6D, how do you even activate 7D? Because it is possible for you to start applying the Tibetan rainbow body practices and get the most out of this thing, to really start to meditate on timelessness, foreverness, and your idea of your awareness being the one infinite creator. Some really great exercises in the Law of One on that we're going to go through in the class that are, again, too contentious to do on the internet at large. Question number 17 Is there a guarantee to the class? This is a question people have. What if I don't like it? What if I'm not happy? Are you going to give me my money back? And the answer is that the refund policy that we have is that it will happen within the 48 hours of the first class. So in other words, if you've watched the first class and you don't feel like this is for you, you're not happy with what you're hearing, you feel like, okay, this is really not working out for me, I don't know what's going on here, that's great. You can tell us and we will gladly refund your money. In fact, we've got a whole thing worked out with our credit card processor so we can refund you directly. There's no muss, no fuss. However, if you're going to commit beyond the first class and you're going to really get involved in this thing and you're taking that journey with us, that's where the refund policy is not going to be there. Because frankly, I don't want you to sign up for this unless you're really serious. I don't want you to sign up for this unless you really believe that this is something that you want and that the sacrifice, which I understand money is really tight. I lived that way for many years, making $200 a week after I graduated with a BA in psychology. I know what it's like. So this is going to be hard for some people, and we've had letters of people saying how much difficulty they have in getting ready for this. So we do want to make that refund policy available. Special exceptions might be made in certain cases, but in general, just please, if it's within 48 hours of the first class, that's fine. Otherwise, you're making a commitment to be on this journey with us. Now, those are all the questions that I have slides for. Are there any other questions that we have that we wanted to answer that we didn't get in?
You can just ad-lib for a little bit if you want.
Okay, my wife has given me permission to ad-lib for a little bit. So that's great. I'll start by drinking a glass of water. How about that?
So, well, this is really, the invitation to show up and be a part of this intimate class with you. And then
Well, you can talk on camera. You don't have to hide.
No.
So, okay. Let me just do a little summary here. We're at about 90 minutes, which is perfect. Again, it really amazes me the amount of hatred that my work inspires in a small, let's say, 1 to 4% margin of the people that follow this work. It's amazing how angry they get. It's amazing how vindictive they get, that they genuinely want to hurt me and they want to hurt my family. It's crazy, the stuff that we see. And again, why does this work attract so much energy? Why is this work getting so much opposition? How in the world did whoever did it take 5.75 million videos with my name in them and remove them from YouTube literally the day after I pointed out to try to humiliate me in front of the public? How the heck does this happen? Let me just get to a nice, I'm going to get to a nice slide here that we can use to have something to look at. Casey needs to cut to that. Well, look, I believe the reason why our work attracts so much of this negative energy is because it's true. Because we're on to something. This is the grand solution to the puzzle of all of the seeking truth movement, whatever it is. Whether you're studying reincarnation, whether you're studying ESP, whether you're studying ancient civilizations, who built these giant stone monuments, where did they come from, what is their agenda, whether you're doing interdisciplinary religious study, is there a connection between Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Judaism, everything, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism? And the answer is yes. There is a single solution to all of the great mysteries in the seeking truth arena, and that solution is Ascension. It's a very, very hard sell. It's very, very hard to convince people that the sun is going to do some multidimensional energetic release that will fundamentally change the ground state of reality. It is so easy to get lulled into complacency, to think the world is just going to keep humming along, everything's going to stay the same, I'm going to live out my life, I'm going to get to be 80, 90 years old, or however long it is if I take care of myself, got a plan for my future. And I'm not saying don't do that. I'm not saying that you should be sitting out in the backyard in a lawn chair with the bong on one hand and the beer on the other hand, waiting for the solar flash. I'm not saying max out your credit cards. I'm not saying let go of your financial responsibility And definitely I'm not saying to go call people up who you've always wanted to tell to F off and just let them have it on the phone. You want to do the opposite of that kind of stuff. You want to forgive them, resolve old wounds. This time that we're in is about tying off the old and bringing in the new. Finding loving ways. What were you saying, Elizabeth?
It's an eternal plan.
It's an eternal plan. That's right. We are going through something that is so amazing. The whole change is so stunning. It's so personal. Whatever is right in your face, whatever you're dealing with every day that's right in your face, slapping you in the face, that is your ascension process. You don't have to look. You don't have to wonder to see what the issue is. It's there. It's in your face. It's real. It's dogging you all the time. It's part of your everyday life. So the answer to all of this is to get back to your roots, to get back to your spiritual core. Don't let yourself get so distracted by stress. Don't let all of your time be whittled away in worry and fear and how am I going to have enough and how am I going to deal with this and how am I going to pay that bill and how am I going to deal with this argument and how am I going to deal with that struggle. Spend some time pampering yourself. Spend some time, taking a bath, lighting some candles. Bring your wife or your girlfriend or your husband or your boyfriend out. Do something nice. We just did that the other day. We got to take care of ourselves. We got to take care of each other. Invest in love. And if you don't have a relationship, we have a whole module in the class on that as well. Understanding what are the obstacles to love? What are the obstacles to having a healthy relationship? What do you need to do to get into a healthy, sacred relationship if you don't already have one? Or if you're in one, how can you make it healthier? Because relationships are so important. We have a whole module just on relationships in this class because it's so significant. Yeah, so you're going on a personal journey with me. This is something I've never really done before. It's interactive. Your questions are going to be answered at the end of each session. We are really making this available to everyone, but we just need it to not be totally public because, again, there are some really interesting things you're going to learn that are contentious that some people are going to have a real hard time with if they're not already on an advanced spiritual class. So this is a PhD. This is not a bachelor's degree. This is not a master's degree. You can get all that stuff from the things I've already done. The doctorate level is a much deeper study. It's a very esoteric and advanced study, and it gets into some things that are really surprising that you might not have thought of. So I do believe Ascension is real, and I've thought about for a long time, well, how do I get out these teachings that certain people really should hear? But if I put it out on a mainstream level, people are going to go crazy, they're going to freak out, they're not going to like it, they're going to make videos about it, they're going to go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So this is how we decide to do it. So I'm very grateful that after all these years of all this investment that we've got this live streaming studio working, we have the opportunity to bring you this message. We had 3 different platforms of live streaming that would work, so we were able to not be interfered with today. I am so looking forward to bringing you on this journey with me, this personal Ascension class. 1 week from today is all there is left to sign up. I am going to make it worth your while, and if you don't like it, you can get your money back. These presentations will be rich with slides and multimedia. It's not just me talking on 3 camera angles. And as somebody was also saying to me, well, David, your live stream was all over the place. You're going this way, that way, the other way. I can't invest in a class where you're going to do that. That's not what this is going to be. These are going to be structured presentations, slides outlining everything, lots of information condensed as much as I can into each session. It's going to be packed with information, well worth your while. So anyway, I'm David Wilcock, and apart from the Ascension Mystery School, you are going to still be hearing from me on the bachelor's and master's degree level. I intend to do a lot more live video. I intend to cover the Alliance versus the Cabal. I intend to cover disclosure. So I'm not disappearing, so please don't spread those rumors either. This is just an online program to teach the PhD degree to those who want it. But I'm going to do a lot more for everybody else, you included, to see. So that's it for right now. I'm David Wilcock, bringing you the Ascension Mystery School, and let's roll that opening clip once more. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Thank you.